We have almost as many people as we had registered, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. We are recording this so that people who aren't able to participate today will get the chance to watch later. So hopefully everyone feels comfortable with that. So I'll welcome everyone to the second event in our Chicanx Latinx Students STEM series. I'm Dr. Jessica Castillo Vardaro. I'm a professor of ecology and evolutionary biology in the biological sciences department. So this evening, we prepared a panel of faculty from across STEM disciplines at SJSU, and they graciously volunteered their time to share their experiences with you and to engage in a conversation with us. So before we begin, I would like to give an overview of the STEM series program. Then we will hear from each of our panelists as they introduce themselves. We will have a short discussion and then open it up for Q&A with questions from all of you. And then following that, we'll have a short reflection and finally close this event together. So this event is the second in a series of conversations, workshops, and community building events designed to uncover the hidden curriculum behind STEM education, to demystify the academic experience and help you succeed as a STEM major at SJSU. So as a member of the Latinx and other underrepresented communities, we are often the first in our families to forge this path. So the space is meant to make sure that we don't have to do this alone. So while I am leading the series, I'm not doing it alone. It is a collaboration among the Chicanx Latinx Student Success Center, the SACNAS at SJSU Student Org, and myself. And so I want to extend a huge thank you to Lily Pinedo Gangay and Elisa at the Centro for helping make this series happen. Also plug the SACNAS at SJSU Student Org. This is an inclusive group dedicated to fostering success and community here at SJSU. Anyone can join the group, and you can do so by filling out the form if you scan this QR code, or you can follow the group on Instagram and connect that way. All right, so as I mentioned, this is our second event of the year. Our next event is a workshop on how to get involved in research on campus. And then our final event of the semester, we will hear from people outside of SJSU sharing their personal journeys in STEM. And then there's more to come in spring of 2022, so keep an eye out for that. All right, so let's get started. So our panelists are going to speak first. You can post questions at any time in the chat, either to everyone or to me or Lily or one of the panelists. You can also submit an anonymous question via a Google form, which I will post in the chat. I will post in the chat in a second. You can raise your hand virtually, and hopefully someone will call on you. And so dialogue in the chat is encouraged, and I will try to pay attention to what's going on in there as will our panelists and Lily, who's helping moderate. So while we are in this space, we are making an agreement to our fellow participants. So some things to remember are that what is said here stays here, but what's learned here leaves, meaning that you don't go home and tell your friends, oh my goodness, so-and-so said such and such thing, but rather, take what you learned from this experience and not just the chisme. Also take space and make space. So sometimes we have trouble making space for ourselves to be heard. So take some space for yourself, but also be mindful of others' space and make room for them to participate as well. All right, so we are ready to turn it over to our panelists. We will go through each of you one by one in about 2 to 3 minutes. So please share a bit about your personal history and how you got interested in science. And I can go first. Let's see. So I was born in SoCal in a big Chicano family. My dad has something like 32 first cousins. And I grew up running around the kitchen of our Mexican restaurant instead of daycare. My mom was born in Bogota, Colombia, so I identify as Chicana and Latina. And as a kid in Santa Ana, I grew up going to the beach and taking family vacations to the mountains, the desert, and national parks. So I knew from a young age that I wanted to be outside and working in nature, but I didn't know how to do that. And then in high school, I thought I wanted to be a doctor, a teacher, or a scientist. And I got to shadow some doctors for a few days one summer and realized that I didn't want to do that. So I went to college thinking maybe I'll be a science teacher. And as an undergrad at UC Berkeley, I saw what awesome research my TAs were doing. And so it was through talking to them that I first learned what professors do. I had no idea what professors do before then. And I was too afraid to talk to professors. So I learned a lot by talking to my TAs. And through them, I learned that as a professor, I could be both a scientist and a teacher. And so I decided to go to grad school. So I got a PhD in wildlife science from Oregon State University. I'm the first in my family first in my family to get a PhD and the only scientist. And then all through grad school and up until I got this job at SGSU, I was seriously considering jobs working for the government with either the US Fish and Wildlife Service, the USGS, the US Geological Survey, the National Park Service. So I didn't know necessarily that I wanted to be a professor until I became a professor. I guess I forgot to mention that panelists share one thing about yourself that is non-science related. So when I'm not teaching or doing science, I love gardening and cooking. So last weekend I made chile verde with the chilies from my garden, and that's just the best thing ever. So with that, thank you. I will turn it over to whoever wants to go next. Or I can pick on someone.
I can go next if you give me access.
Yes.
I can put up my slide.
I'm trying. Okay, you should be able to.
Cool. Hello, everyone. My name's Dr. Alberto Rascon. I'm a tenured associate professor here at San Jose State. Our lab focuses on the Aedes aegypti mosquito, as you can see right here. To me, she's the most loveliest creature on the planet, but at the same time, we're trying to eradicate her. So there's a love-hate relationship with the mosquito. So we're studying digestive enzymes to figure out if there's any important processes that we can inhibit to minimize the mosquito population, because this specific mosquito, the Aedes aegypti mosquito, is a carrier of the Zika, dengue, chikungunya, and yellow fever viruses. And so those are very problematic for humans. So how did I get started? Well, I'm actually like you, I'm a product of the Cal State system. I went to Cal State Bakersfield. And the only reason I went to Cal State Bakersfield is because I was afraid to leave my family. I'm a first gen. I was the first one to graduate every level. And by every level, I mean elementary, junior middle school, high school, college, everything. Everything. I'm the first in my family to do this. So it wasn't really easy to go through this. And in fact, the only reason why I majored in chemistry is because I had a high school teacher who kind of, questioned on whether or not I should be a chem major. I took her chemistry class, I got an A. And then when I said, I think I'm gonna major in chemistry in college, she's like, maybe you shouldn't because you're gonna drop out. So I'm like, okay, check, I will be a chemistry major. But the reason I was in science is because growing up, my parents only knew lawyers and medical doctors. So they say, you're either gonna be a lawyer or you're gonna be a medical doctor. And I thought I was gonna go to medical school. But at the same time, I messed around so much that I thought I was gonna be a professional, either football player or soccer player. If my career didn't take me to Europe, I was going to go to La Liga in Mexico and try to play for them. But then reality hit and I tore my ACL playing semi-pro football. So, a lot of realizations came into play. I grew up in the barrio. So we were really poor, and everyone around me, just growing up in that environment and seeing how lucky I was to go to school kind of changed my whole perspective. And that's when I became a serious student. And luckily it was one of my undergrad professors who kind of encouraged me to go on to PhD program. And so I decided that, since I didn't leave home to work on my undergrad, I decided that I needed to leave California. And I tried to convince my parents, like, look, it doesn't mean I don't love you. It's just I have to grow for myself. I need to grow to get better and then come back. But at the same time, I also was a young parent too. We got married right after undergrad and we had 2 kids. So I had kids in graduate school. And then from there, I went on to work as a postdoc at UCSF, where I decided to do a teaching research postdoc because I didn't know if I wanted to continue on the teaching path or the research path. And so this program allowed me to actually get a taste of both, that I could either become a full-time research active, faculty member, or do a teaching research faculty position like I am now. So I really had a great chance to work at UCSF, and I'm still part of the Center for Discovery and Innovation Parasitic Diseases. So then I kind of continued that path to then working here at San Jose State with mosquitoes. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Alberto. I really connected with what you said about not wanting to leave home, except I knew I wanted to leave home, but still be within a day's drive if I needed to. If I needed to be home by evening, I could hop in my car and be there. Right, who wants to share next or introduce themselves next?
I can go. Hi, everyone. I'm Carlos Rojas. Similar to Jessica, I grew up in Southern California in the suburbs of LA. Went to a high school that was primarily Hispanic. And my graduating class, I don't know, out of the 500 that were studying the freshman year, probably like close to half, probably, or more than that, 60, 70% didn't graduate, or 20 to 30% didn't graduate. So it was just a huge accomplishment in the high school that I went to just to graduate. And then I went basically as far away from home as I could get to, which was and based on the college that I got accepted to, which was in UC Davis, so just an hour and a half from here. And there I knew from the beginning that I wanted to do computer science, just because growing up I had a computer and I always liked to mess around with it. And so I knew I wanted to do that, but I took a class in chemistry, oddly enough, Alberto, and I almost failed it. And so I decided I didn't want to be, so there was 2 computer science things. It doesn't matter, but the point is I decided to go to the one that didn't have too much on the engineering side, which was actually a lot better for me for what I wanted to do. And in doing so, I think I still didn't really know once I got close to graduation that I wanted to go on to grad school. But I think towards the end, I started learning that I like just learning in general. And that's one of the main reasons why I decided to go on to graduate school, because I figured that's one way that I can continue learning. And one tidbit of like me doing this was I took a class where I technically didn't take the prereqs, but I was just interested in the subject. And again, I did okay this time around, but yeah, I don't know. From there, I kind of knew, okay, I do really like learning. So I decided to go on to graduate school and ended up getting into graduate school at Davis. So I was there for like over 10 years. And there I did research in trying to compare 3D shapes, and it kind of fascinated me in the aspect of I can do things that might help someone someday, because we were trying to apply this to medical applications. And yeah, after that, I think, I don't know, I guess the last thing that I just want to say is that I think it kind of feels like when you're like, let's say like us, that we're professors, that like we wanted to get there and we kind of got there. But for me, I always felt like there was always a fork. There was always multiple paths that I could have gone down, and I could have easily ended up in industry if the jobs that I applied to accepted me. But it turns out that the only jobs that actually did accept me were professorship jobs, which was kind of nice and lended nice to the fact that I really like teaching. And I didn't learn that until I got into grad school. Yeah, that's a bit about my history.
Great, and I forgot to mention this for Alberto as well. So what is one thing non-related to your science or your profession?
One thing would be that I have a pilot's license. So that's been fun. I was able to do that during internship summer in graduate school. So that was, yeah, exciting.
Wow. And Alberto, come back to you.
Well, you know, growing up, well, I guess in the hood, right? People didn't expect for me to really love heavy metal music. And in fact, I took my kid who's in college, we went to the System of a Down and Korn concert this past Monday in Oakland Coliseum, and we headbanged and my neck hurts.
Yeah, I was not expecting that. All right, Gina or Walter?
Sure, I can go next. Hi, folks. My name is Yuna Chan, she, her, and I am in the Department of Physics and Astronomy, and my research is in physics education. So I actually grew up in San Jose. I went to Pioneer High School, go Mustangs, and also Steinbeck when it used to be a middle school. I guess kind of why I chose physics was just that in high school, I had a physics teacher who was really great. And I thought that it was a really interesting subject. So I went to pursue it in college. So that was at UC Berkeley. I guess one of the things I learned right when I got to college was just how challenging it can be to really start out in that major. So I had quite a struggle at first, and I think we'll probably get into those struggles later on in this panel. But really the thing that helped me keep going was this awesome community of students called the Compass Project. And so that organization, I think, was really just super sustaining for me. And through people that I met there, I discovered that people actually do research on how to teach people well in physics. And that was fascinating to me because physics is really interesting, but also how people think about physics is also really interesting to me. And so I applied to graduate school in physics education research programs, which actually lives in physics departments. And so I went to the University of Maryland, and I moved across the country for graduate school, which was a really different experience to live in such a different place than where I grew up. So my research at the University of Maryland really focused on thinking about the roles that community and identity play and how people see themselves as physics people. And also while I was there, I became really interested in, if we know so much about how to teach, how come we're still teaching the same way we've taught for about 100 years? So for my so I did what we call a postdoc, which is additional training. That was studying institutional change. So thinking about why STEM departments are the way they are and what it takes to implement any kind of change to curriculum or culture. And then I was really fortunate to get the job here. This is basically my dream job. I get to live in the same city as my parents and be really close to family and, be back in California, which is obviously incredible. Yeah, so that's pretty much how I got here. Oh, and a thing about me, I love powerlifting. I actually competed when I was in graduate school, although I'm not nearly as strong as I used to be. But if any of you ever see me in the gym, feel free to say hi.
Wow, also unexpected. Thank you, Gina. All right, Walter.
Hello, yeah, I guess I'll go. No, I'm just kidding. I'm the last one. Apologies in advance. I tell a lot of jokes, but for those of you who know me, that will not be a surprise. Let's see. Yeah, so I'm going to tell you my entire life story. I guess we have about 30 minutes left, so that'll be good. No, I'll keep it short. But I am also originally from San Jose, represent. So yeah, in the South San Jose area, Almaden, affectionately called the Den. I went to Leland High School, go Chargers. No big deal. But yeah, I don't know if we were rivals, Gina, but yeah, San Jose love. And similar to Gina, actually, we were rivals for sure. Yeah, high school teacher, actually biology honors was, I took it freshman year, and he was just this super exciting, just passionate teacher. And I was like, wow, like biology is the coolest thing just out there. Like, wow. And so that just ignited me. And I was like, I'm gonna study biology in college, and like it's gonna be great. And then I went to college at the University of Chicago. Like I definitely wanted to stay in California, but my SAT 2 scores weren't great. But like I think that impacted some of like the offers or acceptances. But then I got into some good private schools, and I was like, I guess I'm leaving California. But I clearly was not prepared. And we'll talk about some of those struggles later, I think. But yeah, I struggled a little bit academically, or maybe a lot. And also I got frostbite. I mean, I was just like, it was a lot to process Chicago winters with OChem. But yeah, I eventually found my way and ended up, going to graduate school in a colder place. Just kidding. I came right back to California because, are you kidding me? Like, it was just like so traumatizing. So I went to UC Santa Cruz, go banana slugs, just over the hill. And yeah, amazing experience. Just totally immersed myself with the amazing bacteria that exist all around us. And then loved it so much that I was like, I'm going to do more research and become a professor probably. And so where's a great place to do research? Boston. But I forgot my lessons of Chicago, which is the weather is horrible. So yeah, if weather's important to you like it is to me, then take notes. But yeah, I survived Boston, did more research, but like Alberto, I also had an opportunity to do the same exact fellowship, the RACTA fellowship. So that's a path that you're interested in. Happy to talk about that more later. And so that was great because I'd always like wanted to do teaching. It sounded super cool, but if you're busy doing research, then you don't have time or opportunities to do teaching. And like the fellowships I was on in graduate school actually said like I was not allowed to TA. Like I was like, what? And then like everyone else is like complaining like TAing is like horrible. And I'm like, it sounds really cool. And they're like, well, yeah, Walter, you would like it. Like it was like a weird thing to do, like to like TAing or to teach people. And I was like, well, I don't know. I've never done it. Right. So like that was like this constant sort of tension, but the teaching fellowship gave me that chance and I loved it. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I want to teach and do research. And then I was like, and I want California. And then yeah, it all worked out and I'm here and very happy to be here. So that's my life story in like 3 minutes. And the pop quiz, a non-science related thing about me is in 2009, my final year of college. Yes, I won with one of my best friends the 2008-2009 doubles foosball intramural championship. So sort of a big deal. I don't like bragging that much, but this one instance, you're looking at some quality foosball talent here, and I'll close with that.
Do you have a foosball table?
My parents do, but it's a little older. Yeah,
might be danger. All right, so thank you everyone for those wonderful insights into your life. So one theme that came up in the questions posed by students was whether we struggled as students. So can you describe a time in your academic career where you struggled? and how are you able to overcome it? So this can be related to really any aspect of your journey, including your coursework, your extracurriculars, or interpersonal relationships. So students asked, did you ever get stressed from the workload? How are you able to manage it? How long did it take you to find out what major you wanted to stay in? And what was that process like?
So I can go then if no one. So yes, it was a struggle. It was kind of an eye-opening experience for me, because when I walked into my first chemistry class and then followed by other classes, all I saw were pretty much, white male professors. And that was kind of intimidating because, where I was from, we really didn't put too much trust in those kind of people, because when they showed up to our neighborhood, it wasn't for good things. So it was very difficult for me to, open up a dialogue with a lot of my faculty at Cal State Bakersfield. And so that I really felt isolated when I was trying to navigate, now chemistry and taking all the calculus classes and everything that we needed. But luckily, I was in the Alliance for Minority Participation program. So that kind of gave me a little cohort of other people. But then at the same time, it was a little discouraging because, out of the 50 people in my cohort, only 2 of us graduated with a science degree. And that was also very daunting and kind of scary. So I had to learn how to navigate that on my own. And luckily we did have some, tutors and things like that who were part of the program that kind of helped us out. But that's the thing, that we really didn't know that either. So luckily that part of the program, they kind of helped us through that a little bit. And then graduate school, that was a completely different beast. I almost quit in my 3rd and 4th years of graduate school. My PI was not a good mentor. He was actually very difficult to work with. And I didn't know that, right? Luckily we did rotations and all of that, but I didn't really know what to look for in a lab. I didn't know what to look for in a mentor and a PI and things like that. And now looking back, there were so many red flags during my rotation that I should have known better and not joined his lab, right? And I didn't know that. And luckily, I built up a good relationship with one of my undergrad professors who said, you know what, you don't deserve this. You need to talk to your committee. There are ways that, your mental state, needs to be, brought back to its normal stage, because it was horrible. It was like I wouldn't wish what I went through on my worst enemy. That's how bad it is. But at the same time, because of my experience, it's why I think, and hopefully my students think I've been a great mentor to students, because, I want them to know that, it's okay if you're going through something, you can talk to me, right? And it's okay that you're going through this, because there are, these red flags that you can identify when you're in these labs, or there's help somewhere. We just have to identify where you can go to get that help. And so that was one of the biggest things for me, was one, asking for help. That was a huge one. My professors and everyone seemed intimidating, but sometimes our culture, right? That's how we are. We don't really want to ask for help. And so that was kind of a hard thing for me to do and learn. Sorry, my lights keep turning off in my office. And so that was really hard. That was very difficult. But once I overcame that, then, it was a lot easier to talk to people. And so it was really trusting other people was one of the big things that I had to overcome, to really, then everything kind of fell into place. So that's just a little short deal, so I can let the rest of, honestly, I can go on forever.
Yeah, thank you for that. Gina, you were going to share something.
Oh yeah, I guess and thank you so much for sharing that. I think, the things that you're pointing out, Alberto, are really important. So kind of early on when I started college, the exams were really rough for me. And it's actually, I love teaching Physics 50 right now. That's one of the classes I teach. because that was a class where I had really struggled as an undergrad. And I specifically remember on the first exam, I got the third lowest score out of a class of 300 people. And, it's never a good thing when you score so low, you can just see yourself on the histogram because there's only one little dot right there. And kind of, in that moment, I really worried, like, am I actually cut out for this major? And I wasn't even taking the honors version of the class. So I was really doubting myself in that moment. And really, I think the thing that was helpful was finding that community of support of people who really encouraged me to stick it out, but also who were willing to help me think and reflect on the ways I had studied for that exam and whether I should try out things. And so that's the thing I also encourage for other students is, try out different types of study habits and see if there are things that work well for you. And I guess I also kind of throughout undergrad, I had also experienced a lot of that sense of isolation. So physics has about 20% women. And I had taken a couple of classes where I'd be the only woman in my class, which is challenging. I felt like I couldn't be wrong or that I couldn't not even show up because everyone would know that I wasn't there. And one of the things that was really helpful was even just finding the other folks in my program who to kind of be my friends in my cohort and really build that sense of community. Guess I'll pass it off to whoever's next.
Actually, I wanted to chime in here. Hi, everybody. Just to pick up off of the themes that were coming in. I know during registration, we asked you for if you had any questions in advance. I know just Dr. Castillo Verdado hit on one of the questions, but another common question that it's been asked in the chat as well is what happened? How did you prepare for what was next after your undergrad, whether it's going to be people here in the chat are talking about graduate school, or did you have any other jobs in between undergrad and grad school, or even after grad school? Did you go straight into teaching, or did you have other job opportunities? So those were some common questions that were coming in both in the chat and also through the advanced registration. So whoever would like to speak to those.
I can go. So for me, it was kind of applied to all of the things, and then once whatever accepted me, I kind of like went from there. Like I said, it was always like a fork. So I applied to jobs right after my undergrad, but I also applied to graduate schools. And I think since I always had that mentality, I want to keep learning. And I don't know if you all know, but if you usually go to a STEM field for graduate school, it's paid for, and they even give you a stipend to study that. Yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but if someone else has more to add there.
Yeah, thanks. So I can try and touch on a bunch of those things. So in undergrad, I kind of like scratched through. I was never a great student. I haven't had straight A's on a report card since probably like second grade. But I always had like okay grades. But Gina, your story reminded me of my very first math class in undergrad. It was calculus, and I was always really good at math in high school. And I don't remember, it was like a C- on my first exam, and the professor just handed them back and didn't say anything. And I was devastated. I thought, I'm not cut out to be here. I'm at UC Berkeley. I don't belong here. My friends in high school told me that the only reason I got into Berkeley in the first place is because I'm Latina, and that if they were Latina, they would have gotten in, and I wouldn't if I were white like them. And so here I am, my first exam at UC Berkeley. And, C- isn't that bad, but I was devastated. And then it was like 2 weeks later, he gives the curve, and the lowest grade in the class on the exam was a -7. And so my grade was actually like a B+. And so like, that was a huge shock. So, I worked part-time and scratched my way through undergrad, did fine. I took a year in between undergrad and grad school and worked doing field work and lab work for the Museum of Vertebrate Zoology at UC Berkeley. And that's actually where I learned that I liked lab work. As an undergrad, I thought, I don't ever want to be in the lab with a pipette. That sounds awful. Who wants to do that? I want to be out in the field trapping mice and, counting squirrels and, doing chasing elk was one of the things that I did with a grad student. And yes, -7 was the lowest grade on the exam. that was the last math class I ever took. He destroyed my love of calculus. Anyway, that summer, someone offered to pay me to do lab work and field work and curatorial work. And I learned that I was really good at lab work and that you can ask really awesome questions about, the squirrels and the, chipmunks doing lab work. So then I went to grad school, and my first few months of grad school were rough. I went home crying almost every night. I didn't know what I was doing. Again, I felt like I don't belong here. I got the NSF GRFP, which is like the most prestigious graduate fellowship that you can get. And again, I had, at this time, it was my boyfriend at the time, said he also applied. He didn't get it. And he said, well, if I were Latina like you, I would have gotten it. So here I am again, my first couple months in grad school, crying every night because I don't know anyone. I don't know how to optimize a PCR because I've never done that before. The people in my lab aren't helping me. And I was like, I can't do this. I need to quit. But then I stuck it out and met a really good cohort. So our grad students went on a camping trip. And so it was after that camping trip, that was after I'd been there for a few months, that I actually made friends. And everything changed. I went from crying every night, wanting to leave, to crying with my cohort, and then supporting each other and getting through it together and realizing like, oh, it's not me. This is hard. And we got through it together. And after that, I never wanted to quit. Grad school wasn't easy. And there were times when I didn't want to write anymore. But I never wanted to quit after that. And it was really because I made a really good cohort of friends that supported each other through the whole process.
Thank you for that, Dr. Castillo Verdado. Another question or a statement we asked students to fill out in the pre-registration was the statement, for them to complete the statement, I wish my professors knew ... about me. And so I just want to share with the faculty here some of the themes that came from that, and then ask what your responses are to those themes that you're hearing. And I'm sure some of the students here that are visiting us today may also resonate with some of these themes. So one of the themes that came out is that students wish that you all knew that they're balancing a lot, including school. So work, other familial responsibilities, hashtag I need a break. Another theme that came out was that I struggle with my confidence. And some quotes here are, I experience imposter syndrome. I feel that people are smarter than me. And I struggle speaking up in class and I get really nervous. The third theme is sometimes the way that the classes are taught, it just doesn't click with me. And the last theme is that perhaps the exam is the one failing us and it's not us failing the exam. So I'd like to open it up to some faculty members here who'd like to respond. What do you think about what you're hearing? And then any students here who resonate with that, please let us know in the chat.
So, that's one of the things that I learned when I first started here at San Jose State. Like all of you, I wanted my professors to know that, look, I'm a young parent. I know I wanted to be a young father, but they, and I'll give you an example. My grad advisor, the first one, he called my family not my family. He always referred them as personal choices because he wanted me to be in the lab 24/7, and these personal choices will interfere 24/7 with research. And so that really made, that experience horrible. So one of the things that, I kind of came up with in my class is using active learning technique like POGO, for example, where this process where I actually have students work in groups. And I learned that not only using this as an assessment tool, but I got to hear some of the conversations from the students themselves. Like, today I didn't have breakfast. Today, I missed something. And so that gives me an opportunity to then be like, you know what? Hey, I was there too. You know, if you need someone to talk to, come see me. You know, and it's funny because a lot of people see me, you know, I'm 6 foot Mexican guy. You look at me and they're like, he's not approachable at all. Right. But then my students, my own research students will tell you, nah, don't be afraid of Dr. R. He's a big teddy bear. You know, he'll cry when there's sad things on like things. I'm like, yeah, of course I will, because I have kids and I've gone through some stuff that, yes, I will. I'm not afraid to admit it. Right. And I want to make sure that my students see this, because if they see that we're vulnerable, you know, hopefully that'll help you, that like we're all in the same boat. But the thing is that, you know, as faculty members, and I think we could, I don't know, I don't want to speak for everyone here, but I've been trying my best to talk to my colleagues and say, hey, you know, you have to think about these things. You know, this is important. You know, this is just, it's a different environment now. We need to address these somehow. You need to be aware of what's going on, because, you know, otherwise it's going to be very difficult to help you, especially try to get you to the end, right? Especially to try to get you through and have a GPA that's high enough to get you into graduate schools. Because everyone's saying, oh, it doesn't matter. No, it matters, because those are the way these schools are operating right now, right? That they want to see a high GPA. But at the same time, if your GPA is decent enough, that convince these big schools that, look, you need to look at the application holistically. And that's something that also I've been trying to, you know, and actually Dr. Castillo Vardaro and I were talking to a woman from UC Berkeley, where they're trying to make now changes to look at applications holistically. So that way, you know, they can see you as a whole, not just as a piece, right? Because that's going to, your own life stories and your own life struggles is what's going to actually make, you know, make you a stronger PhD student or medical student, because you know that there's struggles, and that's just going to be whatever, you know. I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but when the pandemic hit, I had a lot of white friends who were like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. And we're like, dude, it's just another day in the hood, man. We just got to figure it out and go along. Right. And so, you know, it's like, we're going to make it through. Right. We're going to make it through. And that's part of also too, you know, having that strong, you know, La Familia. I know if my parents weren't there, they did their best when I was in undergrad. You know, I mean, we had a family of 6 and our income was $10,000 a year. And so when I was going to school, if I didn't, luckily I would get financial aid and I would help my mom out, so that way we could pay the bills and things like that. Right. And so those are the struggles that, you know, this is what makes us us and builds our character, and, you know, all this other stuff, you know, we'll make it through. But the thing is that we need a way to convince our colleagues and other people teaching those classes that these are the things that we need to consider. So we're right there with you, I promise. We are trying to, you know, make changes from the inside, but it's a systemic change, and it's going to take some time to really, you know, make those changes, because I tell my colleagues, I'm sorry, the system is messed up. The system is messed up, and we need to figure out a way to not only change it, but convince others to change it with us.
Yeah, thanks for that. I want to shout out Dr. Overnay. So what you were saying, Alberto, and the way we brought up reminded me, and also, you know, in the questions that students submitted, someone asked about how many students approach us telling us about homelessness. And like personally, I haven't had anyone disclose that to me, but as an undergrad, I did know people who were sleeping in their car or in the park. And I know, you know, Dr. Overnay and I have talked about this, like he has food in his office. So when people come and just chat, they can have a snack. And that really kind of opened my eyes about how our role as a professor is so much more than teaching in the classroom and you know, leading a lab. He's here. He's here hiding.
I'm listening. Good conversation, yes. I mean, I'm interested in hearing the conversation more than me talking. There were some good questions posted as well in regards to how to identify good PIs or mentors.
Yeah, I didn't mean to pull you into the conversation. I just wanted to give you a shout out. Lily, was there anything else you wanted to?
Yeah, let me bring up a couple more of the common questions that were asked. Give me a second because I have the themes of the responses.
There was one in the chat and also submitted by multiple people about imposter syndrome. And yes, I have definitely felt that. And I talked about how repeatedly I heard that I got the awards and recognition that I've gotten, not because I earned them, but because I'm a Latina. And so that just like compounds that feeling. And I'm still very much struggling with that. And like this week I got a grant and it was a really big struggle for me to send an email to my department chair saying, look at this awesome thing that I did. And then she called it out in department meeting today. And I felt really uncomfortable about that. But then I had to remind myself like, no, this is how you work through your imposter syndrome. And also this is how you move forward professionally. And so that's definitely something that I still struggle with.
There was also another question, and perhaps Dr. Rojas or Dr. Kwan and Adams can answer this question, which is what habits or practices did you apply to be successful as an undergrad?
I'm still thinking. Yeah, I think it's just an ever evolving thing. I mean, I'm still learning how to manage my time and, you know, especially now I'm just, my daughter was just born like a year and a half ago, and I'm just learning how to be a parent and also be busy with everything else. And I think it's just always a struggle. I think the simplest thing that you probably have heard before is that has helped me ever, mostly in graduate school, honestly, has been doing these Pomodoro sessions where you put 25 minutes on a timer and you just work on one specific thing. And then the second thing was just planning your day, but more, you know, you don't have to plan every minute of it, but like, okay, in the morning, and I think I did this in graduate school, in undergrad too, where I would say, okay, I'm gonna do 2 hours of this, you know, for this project, and then another 2 hours for this, and then just have a rough outline as to how the day's gonna go. Even if it's not perfect, at least you know what you intended to work on, and instead of making a to-do list where, you know, those just are endless. So it's better to like kind of like plan for the day. And yeah, just simple things like that. You don't need, I guess the third tip would be, you don't need to search for the perfect tool. I think I found myself going down the rabbit hole of trying to find the perfect tool that will help me be more efficient instead of actually doing the work. Nowadays, I just use pen and paper and it's fine. I gave up on finding the perfect tool.
I guess to build off of that, because I think everything that you just said is really helpful. I know for me, a lot of it was even just understanding myself a lot better. So one of the things that about me is that I have a diagnosed anxiety disorder. And I think really like going to therapy and understanding how I respond to different things was really helpful for me. So recognizing, you know, oh, if my perfectionism is really queued up, I might really procrastinate on this thing because I'm really worried that it might not be perfect. And even just noticing that and kind of finding ways to kind of talk to yourself in a productive way, for me has really changed things and impacted me a lot as a student and also now as a faculty member.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I agree with a lot of what has been said. I think a theme that's emerging and something that holds true for me is like, I don't know, I remember going to events like this as an undergrad and I was just like, I want the answers, like just give me the answers and then I'll be as successful as you. But the problem is that like, there isn't just one answer, it's personal, right? Like you have to know yourself, reflect on yourself and find things that work for you, right? Like I was so excited to hear like, oh, this time management tool is gonna like change my life. But then it's like, I don't know, it's not how my brain works. Like if I have to work for 25 minutes, it's like I've never like just efficiently applied it. And I was like, well, now I'm just not going to be successful. But then I was like, wait, like this worked. Like everything worked. I like taught a class and I didn't do that tool. And I was like, okay, so like just find the tools that work for you, I think is like a really important thing. And also like I would say that reflecting on mistakes, like as long as you're learning something about that experience, like don't give yourself a super hard time about it. Like clearly sometimes like it takes longer to learn from those mistakes. Like when I got straight C's through OChem, like I wasn't learning from my mistakes there. I was just surviving. And it was horrible. But eventually I was like, oh, okay, like I can at least apply like these different study strategies to the next class or something, right? And also I was like, definitely don't major in chemistry if like that's what's happening. Okay, like you just sometimes you gotta read the writing on the wall. Like if I got straight C's, it's like it's just not gonna happen. And I also like hated it, but also know like if that's something you love, like go for it, right? Find the support, find the mentoring, find the web that's gonna like be there when you need it, right? That web of support. And as long as you're happy with your choices for your career, whether it's teaching, whether it's research, whether it's industry, whatever it is, like as long as you're meeting your definition of success, right? Like that's what's important, not like, oh, you need to become like Professor Adams and tell really bad jokes, right? Like that may be the last thing you ever want to do. And that's okay, right? As long as you're happy, like at the end of the day, because it's your life.
You know,
Awesome. Thank you, Walter.
can I add to that too? Because you guys all hit it up right on. You know, don't take your failures as, you know, failures, right? These are learning experiences. You know, a lot of us take, and I'm including myself, that it takes a long time, right, to realize that, you know what, oh my gosh, okay, now I know how to navigate this. And it takes a level of maturity, right? And sometimes we're not there maybe when we're doing classes and things like that. I was like, Dr. Adams, I got C's in OChem and I'm a chemist. So I decided that in graduate school, when they forced me to take a minor, I did a minor in organic chemistry and I got a 3.76 in my minor in OChem. And it wasn't because, you know, I just didn't know. It's just I didn't know how to approach the subject, right? I didn't know how to study it for me. There were other people who know how to do it for themselves, but for me, it was completely different, right? And so that's a part of who you have to realize for yourself. I think it's very important, you know, and hopefully you can reach out to us so we could help you identify that as well.
All right, well, thank you so much. We're coming up on our time, but I wanted to do a short reflection. I was gonna do 5 minutes, but maybe we'll do like 3 minutes. We'll break up into breakup rooms or breakout rooms, not breakup rooms. Thanks, Walter, for laughing at me. So real quick, we'll do a mini conocimiento. So give your name, major, year, hometown, and then what is one thing that you learned or you're taking away from this experience? So we'll just do this real quick and then we'll come back and share for like a minute or two because I want to be very well, I respect everyone's time. They should be open. There we go.
Are you without a room to go, Raul?
All right. It looks like we're all back. So we're at time, but I just want to give everyone an opportunity to just share with the group one thing that they're taking away from this experience if they would like to. You can also put it in the chat and we'll read it if you don't want to unmute yourself.
Hi, I'd like to share something. It was nice hearing the many different perspectives from you all. I like knowing how your personalities and your background sort of led you to where you are today. And overall, it was really inspirational and encouraging. As I said in our breakout room, it makes the prospect of getting a PhD and becoming a professor pursuing science much more realistic, attainable, and I can picture it. So I really am grateful to have attended this.
Well, thank you, Carlos, for sharing that. And I will stick around for another couple minutes. I want to let our panelists go if they have to. The one last thing that I would like to say is that our next event is going to be about research at SGSU. So this is Thursday, November 18th at 6 p.m. So why you might want to get involved in research on campus and how you do that. And we'll also share some resources for opportunities on campus for working in a lab and potentially getting paid to do so. So that is our next event. And I want to respect everyone's time. So if you need to leave, feel free, and I'll stick around for another couple minutes. Thank you.
And also, if you don't mind, you can pass on my email to students. So if you have any questions or you want to just chat, feel free to drop me an email. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much for sharing